like you said, Rohan, there's a ton of stuff to talk about. Nothing has happened with quarterbacks in the past 2 days. Absolutely nothing to talk about there. But look, obviously there's some big quarterback moves that have been made. We are going to talk about that. But the main reason I wanted to have you on, Rohan, the first time we spoke, you gave me little slivers into the way your brain works. And I started to realize you're really good at this cap stuff and understanding the numbers and how people's contracts will fit within the cap, what's possible, what's not possible. So I just want to pick that brain right now, my man, and learn a little bit more about what the actual situation with the 49ers in. So let's just jump into it. What is the 49ers cap situation? Obviously, we've heard the salary cap has gone up. So where exactly are the 49ers right now? And then what are some moves that they can make to maneuver to be underneath that cap so they have some wiggle room in free agency?
Right. So we did hear that the cap was going off. The first person I saw report it was Ari Meroff of PFF. He said that the cap is going to be $208.2 million for 2022. And it's also important to note that that's not the 49ers cap because they did have a rollover of $1.55 million heading into 2022, meaning they have an additional $1.55 million in cap space going into the year. And that's going to be important because we know that the 49ers crunch down near the cap. Akash Anavarantan of Niners Nation reported this year that the 49ers spent the sixth most amount of money directed towards players this past season. So we know that they like to spend money. So that extra 1.55 is going to help. But currently, as it stands, including that 1.55 million rollover, the 49ers currently have just under 3 million in terms of total cap space. And that is with everybody currently on the roster, including Jimmy Garoppolo. So that's where we stand currently. But
so
like
time
you
out
said,
before you move on, Rohan. So that 3 million underneath the cap, how many players are signed in that?
So currently, that's a big thing because currently the 49ers only have 38 active players.
Wow.
They do have 28 free agents. So it's not the top 51 necessarily, but it's actually the top 38. And that includes a lot of the smaller contracts like the practice squad players that the 49ers signed and like guys like, that you might not necessarily know. Some of the guys that the 49ers signed before the season started to reserve future contracts as well as included in that. So, yeah, it is only 38 players that are including guys like Jimmy Garoppolo, who, has news has been boiling over the last couple of days.
So as of now, Rohan, if nothing changes with the guys that are already under contract right now, the 49ers have roughly $3 million to sign 20 some odd players.
Yeah, they do.
All right. So obviously the math doesn't work well with that because I don't think even if everybody signed on the minimum, that's going to be well over 3 million. So clearly the team has to do some things. Obviously the biggest move is take Jimmy off the books, but let's hold off on that. Who are some players that are currently under contract that the 49ers can restructure their deal so that they save money underneath the cap? And when you're breaking this down, Rohan, for some people that may not know what exactly that means, can you educate us on what exactly that maneuver does and why teams use it to be able to get more money underneath the cap?
Yeah, definitely. So looking at the cap space, when you look at cap space before the league year starts, which this year is going to be March 16th, that's when officially the 2022 season starts. And when you look at it, the goal for every NFL team before that date is to get under the cap space. So currently the 49ers are looking good because they're already 3 million under, as opposed to a team like the Saints who currently are over and have to maneuver a bit to get under. So that's the goal of getting before the league year. But looking at moves where the 49ers can clear up cap space, apart from the majority of the money which will come from Jimmy Garoppolo's trade, which will free up about 25.5 million in cap because he currently is worth 26.95. His cap hit is 26.95. And when we trade him, we take on 1.4 million in dead money, freeing up 25.5 million in cap space. But looking at other players, there are two potential ways, or it's necessarily three ways that you can free up cap space. That's cutting players, that's restructuring players, and that's extending players. And I don't necessarily think cutting is going to be the majority for the 49ers this offseason, but restructuring and extending could be part of the plans. Players to look for are Jimmy Ward, who definitely could be extended this offseason. When you look at it, Jimmy Ward has been a prime player for this 49ers team. In the early part of his career, he was injured a lot. He was a first-round draft pick of Trent Baalke in 2013, but he's proved to be a prominent player over the last couple of seasons, being one of the better playmakers on the team, on a team that really lacks playmakers kind of in that secondary. And he's been a very solid guy in the slot, very solid guy as a safety. He's been an all-around guy. But looking at it, Jimmy Ward is going into the final year of his contract. He currently also has 3 void years after this year. Void years essentially are years where the player isn't necessarily under contract, but they're owed money, meaning the 49ers are going to take on dead cap for 3 years after, which isn't ideal for a player that's not on your roster. So
Right.
instead, the 49ers could look to extend a guy like Jimmy Ward, who's going into his age 31 season, who's going to make about, or his cap hit is about 12 million this season. What that does is it's going to lower the cap hit of this year because the amount of money that is allocated to the season this year, the 49ers can spread that through a signing bonus over the couple of years that they do the extension for. And that could lower his cap hit to potentially about 7.5 million, which saves the 49ers about 5 million in cap for this season. But that's
So
one
that puts us
player.
at about an 8. So now we're
Yeah,
at 8 million if we do that. All right.
exactly.
Jay Mangold definitely agrees with you. Definitely extend Ward. So cool. So obviously Ward is somebody we do want to bring back. So the best way to be able to do that is extend him, save, like you said, about 5 million on the cap. All right. Who are some
Yeah.
other players that may fit into that criteria?
So Jimmy Ward is the prime extension candidate. A prime restructure candidate is Ark Armstead. The reason being, Ark Armstead's current cap hit for 2020 is a whopping $20 million. And Ark Armstead definitely showed out for the 49ers last season, proved why the 49ers gave him that 5-year, $85 million extension before the 2020 season. And looking at it, Ark Armstead this season, he's going to be worth $20 million in cap, or sorry, his cap hit is going to be 20 million, but the 49ers, they could use his contract as a way to potentially free up cap space by doing a restructure. Restructuring Ark Armstead's contract, essentially, it's not like Ark Armstead's losing any money. It's just that money is being deferred to later years through a restructure. That would free up about 8 more million, put his cap hit about 12 million for the ongoing season. And while it does increase the cap hit of future years for Ark Armstead, the good thing going in the 49ers' way is the NFL is expected to have a new TV deal next offseason, which should skyrocket the cap. And that
Mhm.
should be helpful for the 49ers who are looking to extend guys like Nick Bosa and Deebo Samuel this offseason, as well as make these moves so they can shoulder on the cap in later years, which is what the goal is when they look to restructure a guy like Ark Armstead.
So when is that? When would that increase in cap space? What year are they projecting that would hit?
I think the restructure would hit over the next 3 years. Ark Armstead's contract goes on for 2 more years, but he does have a void year in 2025. So the 49ers could look to put some of the money throughout 2023, 4, and 5.
What I was asking more, Rohan, was when the TV deal hits for the NFL.
Oh, got it.
When would that actually increase the cap for the teams?
It would increase it next year.
Okay.
Reportedly, it should increase in 2023 in the offseason, which is next offseason, which is what a lot of teams are looking at. We already saw a huge jump from the 183 million from the COVID year last offseason to the 208 this year, and we could expect a similar jump next year with the TV deal.
Got you. Are there any other players that fit into that mold?
There is one other guy, and that's George Kittle, although I view him as somewhat of a less likelier option for the sole reason that he plays the tight end position, and he has been a little more injured than Ark Armstead, and he's also around the same age of Ark Armstead at 28. So playing the tight end position, right? George Kittle, his cap hit for this year is going to be about the 16 million range. He's also only going to be in the first year of his deal, or he got extended last or 2 off seasons ago for the 5 year 75. So sorry, second year of his deal. And so when you look at it, Kittle's cap hit this year is 16 million, next year is 16 million, and then the year after that it's 18 before lowering to 15.5 million in his age 32 season. The 49ers could choose to restructure Kittle, although I do view that as a less likely move because his cap hits are already fairly high going into his age 29, 30, 31, and 32 seasons. So I am a little skeptical that the 49ers will want to give that much money to George Kittle over the next couple of years, especially if injury concerns do arise for the tight end. But if the 49ers are looking to create cap space to potentially bring on some other players, he is a potential candidate, and that would probably save them around 6-ish to 7 million.
Got you. So just roughly with the moves, barring, so if they did it without Kittle, we're looking at about 16 million. With Kittle, maybe 22 million. So gives up some more freedom. I have two questions for you. One is coming from Damian Lee. So he thinks, trade Mike McGlinchey. That saves about 9 million. So I don't know if that trade is that likely because you do have to replace Mike McGlinchey with that as well. But what are some, obviously we know Jimmy Garoppolo, but are there some candidates that maybe could be traded to save some money?
On this team, I'm not necessarily looking at too many. McGlinchey, some people do believe that McGlinchey should be traded because he's right. McGlinchey currently has a fully guaranteed fifth-year option, which is worth 10.88 million on the books for 2022. And so cutting him will not help because it's fully guaranteed. So you would take on the entire contract of the 10.88 on the books. Trading McGlinchey, however, could potentially save the entirety of the 10.88 while not taking back any money. But however, McGlinchey right now obviously is coming off the torn quad, and he wasn't playing necessarily at an elite level before. He was playing at a solid level, but not an elite level. So his trade market, if it's at all existent, may be very, very low. And I don't think that the 49ers, especially in a year where they are going to revert to a rookie quarterback in Trey Lance, I don't necessarily think that it'd be smartest for them to recoup almost next to nothing from Mike McGlinchey and also try and experiment at a new right tackle in this system where Mike McGlinchey has been there since 2018, going into 2022, because they already have some sort of turnover at left guard, where we don't know if like Tomlinson's coming back. At right guard is probably going to be someone new, be it Aaron Banks, be it Jalen Moore, even if Daniel Brunskill returns. And then if you add another position to that in right tackle, I think that's a lot of turmoil at one of the more important positions in football.
Yeah, Wayne Breezy, thanks for joining in, my man. Personally, I don't think we bring Lakin back. To your point, Aaron Banks better get ready. But definite possibility, man. I was kind of perplexed that they were letting Lakin walk into free agency, but they also did that with Trent Williams, and they were able to bring him back. So maybe there is still hope that Lakin comes back. My question before we move on, Rohan, obviously Shanahan or Lynch at the Combine made it pretty clear that Deebo and Nick Bosa are going to get extensions with the team. They didn't necessarily mention when those extensions would be. I know Bosa would get a fifth year, but I think Deebo is up for an extension either this year or next year. How would those extensions fit underneath this cap, and how would that affect the 49ers' flexibility to sign free agents?
Right. So looking at both players, right, Nick Bosa and Deebo Samuel, Lynch has kind of maintained his stance that the 49ers are going to have budgeted for both players to have extensions, and he's thinking along the lines of what their expected market value is to be. And I do think that both players, if they are going to get extended at all, at least Deebo Samuel, I think they get extended this season. Because looking at it, you're right. Deebo Samuel was a second-round pick, so he does not have that fifth-year option that Nick Bosa does. Remember, both players were out of the 2019 draft class. So Nick Bosa does have a fifth-year option for next season, while Deebo Samuel is technically a free agent next season following his contract. The 49ers do have the potential to franchise tag him, but here's my explanation for why and what it does if both players get extended. Looking at Deebo Samuel first, we have the likes of A.J. Brown, Terry McLaurin, DK Metcalf, and Devontae Adams, all looking to get big money on extensions this offseason. The Packers just franchise tagged Devontae Adams. They're likely to give him a new extension, which could place him into that 30 million range for a wide receiver. The other three receivers are similar to Deebo's caliber, and they all probably are looking to get extensions as well this offseason. So it might be a race as to which one gets it first, because the guys after that are going to probably get more money than the one before them, because that's how the free agent market or extension market kind of has worked in the past. So looking at it, like we saw it last season with Fred Warner, where the 49ers were able to pounce on a deal before the Colts signed Darius Leonard. They saved about $6 million in that deal because Leonard signed for 101.25 over 5 years. Warner signed for 95 over 5 years. So Samuel, the 49ers I expect them to sign Samuel first. Bosa, on the other hand, there necessarily isn't competition, but Bosa is probably looking to reset the market at the end, probably going to top whatever's on the market right now. A lot of people have been throwing out that 5-year 150 range for Bosa, getting potentially the first defensive player of all time to get 30 million. And so that definitely is a possibility. But looking at it specifically for this year, I don't think it impacts our cap that much. Because when we look at the 49ers and how they structure contracts, it'll likely be backloaded. The cap hit for both players likely doesn't increase that much. I'd expect Bosa's to probably increase. So Bosa currently has a cap hit about 10.81 million. I expect Bosa's to maximum increase to 18 million this season. And then looking at Deebo Samuel, he currently has a cap hit of 4.89 million. I don't expect his to exceed $10 million for this year in terms of cap hit. So the 49ers should still have adequate space after fitting those two in. Although you do have to watch out for future years because they are going to be pretty heavy extensions.
Got you. So we don't want to think too far in the future, Rohan, because that could get us all confused even more. So let's just focus on this year. But I like that. So we potentially can extend both of these players without it necessarily affecting what we're able to do in free agency, at least this season, correct?
I agree. And I don't know necessarily if both players are going to be extended until after the 49ers make all of their free agent moves. I do think that that's a very surefire possibility because when you look at it, Fred Warner and George Kittle, the last two extensions for the 49ers, happened right before training camp. So it is in the July range after the 49ers have had all their cap figured out, meaning they've included the draft picks into their 2022 plans, and they've also included all the free agents and everyone they're going to sign so that they can budget for those two players. That could be the route that the team goes this offseason as well. Because apart from Devontae Adams, I probably expect the rest of those players to get deals around that range as well.